Hey guys, what's going on? Megan here. All right, answering questions from my school community. All right, let's see. Bros ask me one question about testosterone, sex, fighting, self defense, and violence. Let's get started. First, I give them a poll. Let's look at the answers. I can beat the average violent criminal in a street fight. That one had, okay, 57 out of 84 votes. So 5 out of 8 people think they can beat the average violent criminal in a street fight. That's interesting. A lot of cappers, but we'll see. All right, next, first question from Bavit Singh, 20 years old, 168 to 170 pounds, 6'2". Strongest lift is 215 pound squat. His weight goal is 220. Career goal is film director. A lot of context. I like that. Level 6, so he's definitely a good contributor to the community. By the way, join guys. It's very cheap right now, but price will increase very soon. Also, I released the testosterone diet course. I've been working on that for months. So it's 80% off if you're in the school community. If not, you are paying full price. Anyway, I've been training MMA for about 3 years now. I've been going deep into my Ikigai for about 6 months, tracking micro, sleep, weightlifting, and socializing. Okay. However, although I understand that these things take time, I've also not been doing everything perfectly. I've struggled with mental and confidence issues throughout this entire process. I've experienced some small gains in confidence, but I still have a hard time with women and socializing. I still feel like if something is wrong with me and I'm not proud of myself nor my accomplishments, I still have a hard time looking at myself in the mirror and I don't know what to do about it. Context: terrible, abusive parents and bullied my entire life. Well, I could definitely relate because, you literally just, especially that last part, right? That's pretty much Migan in a nutshell, young Migan. Terrible mom plus bullied my whole life. On the bright side, it led me to, masculinity and fighting, obsession and all that stuff and made me tough as fuck. But, yeah, definitely something I don't wish for my worst enemy. Now, as far as your confidence issues, I would say it seems like you're overthinking because when I notice men who know how to fight, who are intelligent, who work out, working on their self improvement, and then they still have confidence issues, a lot of time it's because they're overthinking. Again, I don't know you well enough to know if that's, I'm 100% correct on that. I don't know. But from my experience, I've been doing this for a long time. It's usually one of the key issues, right? Because you already have a lot of stats that are better than the average male, but you're probably overthinking. And if you combine that with a perfectionist mindset, yeah, that's going to hold you back. Men who are smart tend to have low confidence because they are perfectionists, right? The smarter you are, the more you know moving pieces to the puzzle, and the more you think, oh my God, I got to optimize this, I got to optimize that, and I got to optimize this. Meanwhile, people with average intelligence or who are dumb, they just optimize like two things and then they just keep it moving. So I think you overanalyzing things, and I also think you are highlighting your weaknesses more than your strengths. It's another issue that men have is, especially in this age of social media, we compare ourselves to the top 0.1% who are also lying and only showing the best sides of their life. And it makes us think that we're not, it gives us imposter syndrome or we think that we're not good enough. Bullshit, right? Don't compare yourself to the 0.001%. Compare yourself to the men that you're competing with in your ikigai, in your region, in your town, in your city. Women only care about relative triple S score, right? So they only care about how you compare to the men who are around them, whether it's in a room, in a stadium, in a freaking gym, right? That's the advantage that we men have. When I say we men, I mean we men who are not Chads, right? Is that you don't have to beat Chad. You just have to beat the guys who are around the women that you are competing for. And that one is easy, right? Because the women you are competing for, yes, on social media, they're going to be looking at Chad, but in the real world, there's not going to be a lot of Chads around them. So I would say, as far as confidence goes, I mean, watch my confidence videos. I explain a lot on how to improve confidence. But I think a lot of you guys you actually know too much. You just overthink. So again, there's so much I could say about this, but I have a lot more questions to answer. So long story short, keep improving, obviously. Keep doing the 10 commandments, obviously. But stop overthinking. That's one thing I think you should focus on. Stop overthinking. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be in the top 1% to be successful, right? You just got to be better than average. And then keep cranking it up from there. Next, from Jamil A. I'm going to give him a like. He's level 6. Good shit. How would you structure full body 3 times a week with Muay Thai 3 times a week? Work part-time at a pharmacy 20 hours per week. Tuesday, Friday, weekend. Main hustle is investing. I work from home. I spend 1 to 2 hours a day. I can only fit Muay Thai Monday and Friday since I can't go on weekends. Or Monday through Friday since I can't go on weekends. My main goal, building muscle, comes first, but I also know enough Muay Thai to defend myself. Recovery is on point. I eat enough macro and micronutrients and have a good sleep schedule. Okay, thanks for the context. Most people that are doing the martial art, I tell them, whether you're doing the martial art or any other sport, full body 2 to 3 times a week, right? 2 to 3 times, because obviously you need the recovery burden of full body workout is, it tends to overlap with Muay Thai. So doing more than 2 to 3 times a week is not recommended. So that's why full body workout 3 times a week is great for fighters and athletes. And then you could do Muay Thai the other, 2 to 3 days, right? Week 1, start with the minimum effective dose, meaning just do full body 2 to 3 times a week, Muay Thai 2 to 3 times a week. And then after that, gauge your KPIs, gauge your recovery, and then see if you could add more sessions of Muay Thai. So that's what I would do. As far as time of day, obviously early in the day is better, but if you can't, perfection is the enemy of progress, right? Just do it later in the day and then take it from there. Next, Nate Sack, next video of it's all 10 T commandments to finding AKI. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm gonna sit down until I die, because everyone wants to hear the next new shiny solution, and that shit drives me insane, right? You got guys who come to me and they're like, oh, what supplement should I take? Or what this? Or what protocol? And I'm like, let's see your 10 T commandment checklist. And they're not even doing half of it, let alone all of it. So I'm going to keep beating a dead horse. It's not sexy. It doesn't sell, right? Because people always want fancy shit, right? But that's also why you guys fall for frauds all the time, right? People who are like, oh, no fab, semen retention. Everyone wants to hear the crazy shit that has zero evidence behind it. But the basics that work, people are like, nah, that seems too easy. So anyway, yep, it's all 10 T commandments and Ikigai, and you forgot the triple S score. All right, next you got Stephen John. Is it possible to have the androgen status and fitness level of ancient warriors / hunter-gatherers, or is the modern man not capable of reaching the physical feats of the distant past? This is something I really wanted to ask Migan, but anyone can answer. So first of all, hunter-gatherers, believe it or not, it's going to strike a lot of people. Hunter-gatherers of today, for the most part, we have higher T than them, because remember, they have a lot of inflammation. They don't have the health care that we have. So for the most part, a lot of them actually have lower T levels than modern men. Now, again, I said a lot of them, not all of them, right? The ones who don't have the disease burden, right? The ones who have, great health care, they're not surrounded by pathogens. Those guys have super high T. So that's one misconception that people have. They think, oh, just because somebody's a hunter-gatherer, they're going to have higher T. No. That's another proof that people are overblowing this plastic shit out of the water. Yes, plastics are bad, but not to the extent that people make it seem to be, because there's some hunter-gatherers who have zero exposure to plastics and they still have low T, because guess what? They have exposure to pathogens and a bunch of illnesses, which wreck testosterone. As far as the androgen status of ancient warriors, it is definitely doable. The problem is, you probably guessed it, is the environment. Remember, the body releases testosterone not based on what you want, but based on what it needs to pass on its genes. So if you're surrounded by alpha males, you're surrounded by warfare, you're surrounded by attractive female that you got to compete for, like a lot of ancient warriors, then yes, your body's going to pump out a fuck ton of T. Why? Because it needs that T for you to reproduce. Whereas today, if that environment is not around you, your body's not going to give you that much T. I think that's one of the hardest things that's one of the things that people have a hard time understanding about testosterone, right? Everyone thinks if they eat healthy and just get some sunlight, they're going to have super high T. That's not how it works. That's why there's 10 T commandments, and one of them is status and sex, meaning compete for status and surround yourself with attractive women daily. Why? Because without those two, you're just going to have the baseline T that a healthy man has, right? Those two things are what catapult your T to the next level, like the Genghis Khans of the world, right? You need, you want warrior testosterone, you need a warrior environment, right? Next, you have Favian, level 7. Damn, he's a beast. Would you be able to figure out if I can beat the average violent criminal from my stats? I'm 6'2", 190 pounds, 17% body fat, strongest lift back squat, 45-pound plate. Oh, you're getting fucked. You're getting bodied. Bad. Yup. See, even you admit it. I have a total of 5 months of boxing experience. Don't know how to shoot a gun or use a knife. You are getting mauled. But at least you're honest. I would say my pain endurance is above average. Here's a picture of me. Nothing special. Let me see. I mean, you tall, right? Take that, use that to your advantage. But to be honest with you, you're gonna get bodied. The average violent criminal will maul you. You guys know I'm brutally honest. It's not for me to hate. It's just tough love. I would say basic shit, right? Build more muscle, get lean, right? Don't get fat. That's how defeats the purpose, right? So don't go above 20% body fat unless you know exactly what you're doing. Let's see, definitely become above average at the top 3 most important fighting techniques, which, striking, grappling on your feet, and grappling in the ground, which is pretty much jiu-jitsu. If you reach 6 out of 10 on those 3, you're good to go, right? Combined with everything else that I said. But yeah, definitely build your strength, man. That's a terrible squat. And remember, punching power, striking power, wrestling power comes from the legs. Next. Migan, do you personally believe you could beat the average male flyweight UFC fighter in a fair one-on-one? Not a champion, but just normal guy in the league. They will destroy me. Are you insane? So that's Harrison Hunt. He's level 6, which is a very high level. No, guys. I'm confident, right, in my abilities, but at the same time, I'm not fucking delusional. Remember, I'm a fight nerd, so I know my limit. Flyweight, the average male flyweight UFC, you have to add UFC to that. If he made it to the UFC, he's beating me in his sleep. You guys really underestimate how hard it is to get into the UFC. You really underestimate. These are remember, there are millions and millions and millions of fighters who are trying to get into the UFC and they cannot, right? The ceiling is just so fucking high, right? And it's not just because of skill. It's many things. It's you got to factor the weight cuts, the mental toughness, the consistency, oh my goodness, yeah. The guys who make it to the UFC, even the losers, even the guys with terrible records, are the best of the best. So, flyweight, yes, I have the mass advantage, but he has the technique advantage. Remember, guys, the only fighting that I've worked on my whole life is just street fights. It's to be able to defend myself against somebody in the streets. That's all I cared about, right? Because I was bullied as a kid, and that was the only thing I cared about was being able to defend myself in the streets. I never cared about professional fighting and all that, because to me it's dumb. It's dumb. Why would I want to risk brain damage for a 0.001% chance of even making a lot of money? You remember, guys, a lot of fighters don't make money. Even the ones who make it to the UFC, only the elite make a lot of money. So they're getting brain damage for what? So long story short, yeah, my fighting stops at street fights. Every technique that I worked on, even when I was, practicing wrestling and Muay Thai and boxing, I'm ADHD combined with being a nerd. So I've studied so many different fighting styles my whole life. Everything that I focused on was just things that I could implement in a street fight. The moment it was something that was super advanced or only useful for combat sports or, I skipped it, because I'm very practical. So yeah, a flyweight fighter will destroy me. To be honest, I think, let's see. I'm trying to do some math here. I'm trying to see where's the limit where I could actually win. Nah, flyweight would body me. Now, obviously, if I get lucky, right? If I hit him with there's a big if, right? I have the power advantage. I have the strength advantage. So if I hit him, right, or I grab him first, of course I'm going to win, right? But that's a big ass if, right? And if he's a UFC fighter, he's going to know that I have the size advantage and the strength advantage. And he's definitely going to, adjust, right? Because to make it to the UFC, not only they have the physical stats and the mental stats, but they also have the IQ, the fight IQ, right? They know how to adapt based on advantages and disadvantages. So the only way I win is if I get a lucky knockout, right? Or a lucky grab, right? Because even if I get him to the ground, his jiu-jitsu is going to be way better than mine. Anyway, next, Jack Chen. Migan, if we should always be strapped with a gun. By the way, he's level 6 as well, which is beast. Migan, if we should always be strapped with a gun, a blade, and pepper spray / taser for less serious, non-lethal confrontations, is learning how to fight, parentheses, learning martial arts, still very important? Absolutely. The average person probably won't get into many violent confrontations in their life, so is the hours put into martial arts training still high return on investment? Those weapons should be able to cover every violent confrontation scenario, right? So, okay, so let me answer that, right? The benefits of learning how to fight is not just so that you could defend yourself in a street fight, right? That's one of the biggest reasons, but it's not the only reason. Because the other benefit of learning how to fight is the unshakable confidence. I said it many times and I say it again. One of the biggest predictors of how much anxiety your brain will give you, or how little anxiety your brain will give you, is the amount of people in a room or environment that could whoop your ass. So if you walk into a room of 20 people and you scan, your amygdala is always scanning for threats, and you notice that multiple of those people can whoop your ass just based on the way they look or whatever, your anxiety will go through the roof and your confidence will go down and your cortisol will rise, right? That's just evolution 101. It's your body making sure that you take a submissive stance and you try to avoid conflict. The reverse is also true. When you walk into a room, let's say 20, 30, whatever, and you know with high certainty that none of them can harm you, your anxiety drops and your confidence rises. Your posture improves. This is all subconscious. Your serotonin goes up, your testosterone goes up, and your body switches to dominance-seeking behavior. There's a ton of science on this. And again, one of the biggest predictors, you guessed it, is fighting ability. The brain is always scanning for fighting ability, even when you don't know it. That's why if you're conscious of it, you notice that when we walk into a room, we literally size each other up. We look at shoulders, we look at muscle size, we look at eye contact, facial. It's so fast. The amygdala does it in microseconds, and it communicates with the frontal cortex, communicates back and forth to try to decide what your hormones should be in that scenario, right? And if your frontal cortex and amygdala decide that you at risk, then again cortisol goes up, testosterone goes down, right? Serotonin goes down as well. So being able to fight subconsciously comes with the benefit of high confidence, low anxiety, right? Not always, obviously there's some exceptions, but on average that's how it works. So not only are you getting the benefit of being able to defend yourself whenever you want, you have the advantage of protecting your loved ones no matter what happens, but now you have the advantage of subconsciously high confidence, right? That's why I believe every single man should fight. Not to mention that, you said earlier, actually I'm going to get to that part, but not to mention that the process of increasing fighting ability forces you to be in shape, forces you to build muscle, forces you to not get too fat unless you're a sumo wrestler or some shit, right? It forces you to constantly be on your toes, So there's so many direct and indirect benefits of pursuing a martial art. It's the highest return on investment thing a man can do, by far. It also keeps you away from being home all day. It makes sure that, it exposes you to social scenarios. So you work on your social skills, you join a brotherhood. It is one of the single best things a man can do to improve is to just learn a martial art, right? Learn a martial art. Reach 6 out of 10 minimum. What else? Also, you said, what about the weapons that you told us to carry? Yeah, but you're not always going to have those. Trust me, there's going to be scenarios where you're probably in a plane or in a bathroom. There's going to be scenarios where you don't have your weapons on you. It could be by accident. And there's going to be scenarios where you don't have time to reach for your weapons. The weapons are like a backup plan or something you could use if you have time to prep, right? But you can't hope that your whole life you always going to be in a perfect scenario where your weapons are on you and they're ready to deploy and you have time to deploy them and then they don't miss. No. That's too conditional. Learn to fight so that push comes to shove, you got, your own hands to rely on. Next, Jonathan Torres. I work out like a healthy crack. I give him he's level 3. Okay, I work out like a healthy crackhead. I burn about 1,000 to 2,000 active calories a day. I'm 24, 5'10", 180 pounds. Body fat around 11 to 13. God damn. I want to cut. I walk 20 to 30,000 steps a day. Was wondering if that is too much steps and if it would take my T levels. First of all, you a fucking beast. Let me know who hurt you, man. Because like I always say, man, when men go Super Saiyan, yep, good physique too. When men go Super Saiyan, it's usually because we have some pain. I know from experience, and I know from working with countless men. So, but again, lot of props for the progress. Definitely a beast. Let's see. What was the question again? I want to cut. I was wondering if that is too much steps and if it will check my T. Well, there's only one way to know, right? Your KPIs, right? If your grip strength is going up, your resting heart rate is going down, your VO2 max is going up, your blood pressure is good, your sleep is good, your REM sleep is good, keep doing what you're doing, right? If it's working, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Let's see. Next. Wait, what does he say here? Tafim, I guess you're not on Discord. Migan legit was competing with members in step counts and daily doing 30 to 40,000 steps. Are you good? Yeah, yeah. In fact, on Monday I did 40,000 steps. What's today? Yeah, I think it was a Monday or Tuesday. But yeah, I try to do 20, 30,000 steps. My goal is 30, but I missed the mark. Usually when I'm making videos like this, or I'm working on paid courses or whatever. Today, my steps were trash today. But yeah, I try to do 20, 30,000 steps. Some days I do 40. And my most was 50. Anyway, Adam Lebroni, 6'1", 190 pounds, FFMI 22.6. Okay, pretty good. 5.5 mile, 5.45 minute mile. Let's see, 21.55 5K. Okay, pretty healthy. Nice. Goals: increase cardio without losing muscle or sacrificing T levels, and train for a half Ironman for next year, longer term. Okay. How do we tell? Oh, he's level 6'2", beast. How do we tell when the inverted U curve for running, all different forms of cardio, begins in terms of its benefits to T levels? I answered that earlier, but let me finish reading. And I know it depends on recovery, training experience, etc. But what would you say as an average estimate for the longest someone can jog at an 8-minute mile pace before it begins to lower T? So again, your heart rate was going to be one of the leading indicators, right? One of the earliest signs that you're overdoing it is when your resting heart rate is too high, or even your running heart rate is higher than what it normally is, right? Higher than a standard deviation. So let's say your resting heart rate is 50 and it starts to climb up to 60 and shit. Clearly you're doing too much. Or let's say your running heart rate at the same pace is around, I don't know, let's say 130 beats per minute, and then it shoots up to 140 or more. You're doing too much, right? So your heart rate is usually the first sign, and then obviously your grip strength and things like that. So only way to know is to do whatever you were doing before, and then slowly increase the intensity or the volume, and then monitor your heart rate, your grip strength, things like that. You can also look at your sleep metrics, right? If you're not going into deep sleep because your body's still in sympathetic nervous system mode, that's not good. It's probably a sign of very high cortisol. Next, we have I train like a, okay, this is from Sid. Okay, level 7, so he's a tank. All right, I train like a martial artist in terms of my protocol, so lots of muscular endurance work, high rep calisthenics, rounds on a heavy bag, grappling and jiu-jitsu for 4 sets of 5 minutes, jump rope, etc., and also do a decent amount of cardio outside, 10,000 steps a day, 6 miles a week of running. This is all with the end goal of an amateur fight in mind. However, I was thinking about the trade-offs in a street fight scenario where the duration likely wouldn't exceed 2 minutes at the most. Wouldn't it be more optimal to train like a bodybuilder / powerlifter while still maintaining a small amount of the combat sports endurance and most importantly skill? I was thinking that doing tons of slow twitch, longer duration exercise would turn my fast twitch into more slow twitch versus doing shorter rounds and being more explosive for those. Shorter rounds would be better for a street fight where the duration is guaranteed to be lower. What do you think about this trade-off? And do you agree that the average person would be better off doing lower duration, high intensity, strength focused combat training, also allowing them to maintain more muscle mass versus the traditional endurance based training that they have you do at most fight gyms? Feel like an inverted U curve again. Okay, so long story short, by the way, yeah, you're definitely right. In a street fight, it's not gonna last a lot. It's not gonna last long unless you're fighting somebody who's a trained fighter, which is so rare. So I think everyone should have good cardio, not just for the health benefits, longevity. One of the biggest predictors of how fast you die is your VO2 max, right? If you got good cardio, you're almost guaranteed to live long, all else equal. Also, if you're going to be fighting, trained fighters, cardio is literally, S tier, S tier. As far as a street fight, again, you don't need a lot of cardio because, again, most fights end really fast, especially if you're fighting an untrained or barely trained person. But the fact that it takes so long to build cardio is the reason why I don't want to gamble on that bitch, right? Because you don't want to be into a fight with someone and be like, oh, hold on, cardio is a limiting factor. I'll be right back. Let me go increase my VO2 max by 40% and I'll be back. No, right? You don't want to be in a situation where you fighting someone and you realize, oh shit, this nigga's a crackhead. He has mad cardio, and now you fucked, right? Because again, cardio is the limiting factor. If you do not beat a person in that short window, which even you confirm, right? Which is true. Most fights end really fast. But if you don't beat that person in that window, now cardio is the limiting factor. In fact, if you're stronger than your enemy, more powerful than your enemy, right, in a street fight, and if for whatever reason you can't beat them in those first few minutes, now they have the advantage if they have better cardio than you. See? So a fucking scrawny marathon runner is going to whoop your ass if somehow you don't knock him out with the strength and power advantage in the first few minutes, because now you got too much lactic acid, you're gasping for air, and everything goes out the window. That's why cardio is such a big deal, because it's the bottleneck, right? Once you out of cardio, once you run out of gas, years of training go out the window. Years of lifting, your strength, your power, all of that shit goes out the window, right? So that's why I would say you still want to train your cardio. Now, of course, you don't have to have Marab cardio, right? That one is only if you're going to be doing combat sports, right? But I wouldn't stop cardio altogether. So what I recommend is, if you're not going to pursue combat sports, you're not going to do an amateur fight, then you could cut back on the cardio, but not so much that you lose, most of your adaptations, right? So you still want to have good cardio. Like I said, 6 out of 10, right? Above average, just in case you don't beat the motherfucker in the first few minutes of the street fight. But if you decide to go back to pursuing the amateur career, then yeah, I'm sorry, you're going to have to spam cardio. Hopefully that answers your question. Next, you have Chris Garrett. Wait, I want to make sure I answer this question. Let's see. And also, whenever I say like spam cardio, I'm not saying to sacrifice muscle. You're going to sacrifice the maximum muscle you could put on, right? Especially if you're natural, but you still want to keep muscle and strength, because that's also one of the biggest, in the first few minutes of a fight, strength and power decides who's going to win. After those first few minutes, now it's cardio. So you need both. Next, age, Christopher Garrett, level 6, age 23, 5'8", 15 to 17% body fat, only assuming I have a 6 in lighting, it's even more prominent when no consumption of food or drink. Okay. Weight 199, strongest lift, squat 4 or 5 pounds. Tribal deadlift, is that one for the squat or the deadlift? Anyway, question 1. Was curious in how should I prioritize working out to increase power / plyometrics for boxing while doing HSP? So that one is already embedded into HSP Centurion. Your warm-up sets, the reason why they're warm-up power sets, if you check the sheet, is for that purpose, so that you develop power. Also, heavy day allows you to work not just on high velocity power, which is the warm-up power sets, but also low velocity power, which is the actual working set on heavy day. So yeah, it's part of HSP Centurion. And in addition to that, if you want, you could do power sessions. Also, your HIT session that you're supposed to be doing 2 to 3 times a week, like every man should do, that's going to help with power. And like I said, you could add plyometrics on top of that somewhere else. Question 2, I've been boxing for 1.5 years, and at what point should I stop boxing and move on to Muay Thai? I remember you spoke on reaching a certain level, and it's all like level 1, 5, etc. Yeah, so whenever you reach level 6, meaning above average in any of the 3 categories, right? Let's say striking or grappling, standing, grappling, ground, whatever, submission, you could go on and learn something else, right? Because at that point, there's diminishing returns. So if you reach level 6 in boxing out of 10, yeah, you can move on to Muay Thai. And once you reach level 6 in Muay Thai, now you could decide if you want to continue with Muay Thai, go back to boxing or whatever. But try to get 6 out of 10 in striking and both forms of grappling. Let's see. Next is AON NATO. Hey Migan, what do you think about the idea of polygamy? And for the high T, ultra successful triple S score, max high demand man, openly having the freedom to be with multiple beautiful women at once. You guys gotta use punctuations because I gotta reread this shit. What do you think of the idea of polygamy for the high T? Having the freedom to be with multiple beautiful women at once after he's built his own empire and basically conquered life. To me, it seems like it gives the same biological, psychological, testosterone benefits as your new chicks every week advice, but way more stable to society. Long-term connections. Society rewards the men who work hard and conquer. The top 10% of men. The top 10% of men are the ones who get to reproduce more offspring and raise them. Better family structure if unintentional pregnancy occurs. Higher quality connections overall, and most importantly, children of different households now share a masculine father figure, which many modern boys lack, keeping them mediocre. Willing to have you guys, this is too long, man. Willing to have you prove me wrong here, but hookup culture breeds dysfunctional fatherless homes. Our daughters getting manipulated by men with flashy fake value, and not to mention the STDs, while legalizing polygamy and reworking the fucked up Western marriage divorce laws altogether rationally sounds like the better middle ground. Not to mention the rare supply of these top 1% men will make it a benefit for the naturally hypergamous women if they were to share them just like in nature, while the men at the bottom will have a greater reason to build in life to reach this higher threshold for the prize, pushing them to be stronger and more competitive. More masculine men are created. Openly, you proved me wrong. Okay, that was way too long, guys. You gotta be more concise than that. But long story short, societies have already tried that, right? You listed the benefits. We all know the benefits, and you're right. All these things are benefits of going back to the one man for every 17 women period that we went through at one point. The downside, which has happened everywhere, is crime. Crime goes through the roof when we have a society that you just described. For the simple fact that a lot of men have no access to females, and in almost every society, when young men that are full of tea see that there's a guy who's hogging all the hoes, there's revolutions, there's a lot of crime, there's a lot of rape, there's a lot of kidnapping. It destabilizes societies. Meanwhile, when men see that they have upward mobility, even if it's hard, crime rate goes down. Because remember, the one thing that motivates males in every society is the desire for cheeks. If you make that hard, not impossible, but hard, too hard, then a lot of men turn to crime and rape. So yeah, it's been tried. Everything you just explained, it's been tried many times throughout history, and it always leads to super high crime and rape. Anyway, next. DB level 6. As a small untrained kid in school, I was naturally very good at fighting, grappling specifically. Some kids complimented me on it. I was good at sprints, long distance, volleyball, rugby, flexibility, explosiveness, etc. I was decent at kicking distance, may have been technique, but I sucked ass at long and high jump, throwing, dodgeball. What muscle is causing me to be naturally good at grappling but have pillow hands? Okay, it's more than just a muscle thing. There's coordination. It could be power. Yeah, it's not something I can answer by just reading what you just wrote, right? I have to analyze your whole body. There's also, let's see, you say you suck that long. There's also insertions. There's leverages. Yeah, it's more than just a muscle. Anyway, next. Mustafa Al-Kayaz, level 3. Height 6'3". Man, all you motherfuckers are 6 foot tall. You lucky hoes. 6'3", 203 pounds. Strongest lift is bench at 225 for 1. Squat, which is 275 for 1. Fast metabolism. Have always been a hard gainer. 15% body fat. I'm curious. So when I was born, one of my balls didn't drop down to my scrotum. It was still in my stomach. But when I was 2, the doctor put it down surgically. Do you think today as a 19-year-old that has a major effect on my testosterone? I read that you only really need 1 for adequate level, and I have 2, but I just wanted to make sure. Also, the one that didn't drop is a bit smaller than my other one. Yeah, that's what normally happens. I can also grow a mustache, goatee, facial hair, and I don't have a micro penis, so I'm guessing it's normal levels. Yeah, a lot of people forget that, we have 2 balls for a reason, right? If one is not working correctly, the other one compensates. That's why people that freak out about, about like, oh, I have varicocele, or I have this, I have that. If you look at the studies, they're not compromised that much because the body always looks for a way to return to homeostasis. So the body either increases LH or it makes your testicles more sensitive. Your body always finds ways. In fact, look, you just described it, right? You have facial hair. You don't have a micro penis. Yeah, you're fine. You're fine. It's only when your symptoms and signs start to get crazy that I will start to worry. But yeah, you made it just fine. Next, and also if one of your balls hadn't dropped, it's most likely DHT issue, because that's the androgen that's mostly responsible for your balls dropping. Anyway, let's see. George Hatam, age 19, 145 pounds, 9 to 10% body fat, 6 foot tall. See, everybody's 6 feet tall. Strongest lift, 100 kg bench. Goal to be the ultimate fighter, get on a static physique, and also excel academically. Am I too low on muscle mass or weight? Well, you are 6 foot, 145 pounds, brother. That is victim weight, right? That is very, very, very low. You should be as close to 180 pounds as possible while staying lean. I know it sounds crazy, but yeah, it's doable. My goal is to be a great fighter. My goal is to be a great fighter, capable of protecting while also having a physique which is aesthetic to women. What would you say is a good way to reach, and at what body fat percentage? Yeah, you should try to aim for at least 180 pounds, right, at 10 to 15% body fat, because that's well within your potential. Let's see. If I do have to bulk, would it be better for me to bulk at 7% body fat? Wait, what? What do you mean 7% body fat? Or just start bulking at 10%? You're not a 7% body fat. You don't know what 7% body fat is, brother. 7% body fat is close to like IBB level. These guys are 5%. So 7% is extremely lean and shredded. For full body workouts, 3 days a week, do you suggest 2 sets per exercise or 3? Do HSP Centurion, right? All the program, that's the reason why I create those programs, is to take care of all the programming questions. What's the minimum stats required, and what would you say are peak or the most optimal stats? Thank you, Migan. So yeah, full body, do Centurion 3 times a week. The sets and reps, all in the program. As far as your weight, you definitely gotta put on some mass. Just don't get fat. Don't get fat, right? Don't go above 20% body fat. Try to stay as close to 15 as possible. Next, Raul Sanchez, age 26, 180 pounds, 5'3", 27% body fat, FFMI 24, goal 155 pounds. It's become an actor. Strongest lift, bench 261, or squat, I guess 285. Hey Migan, hope you're doing well. I wanted to get your thoughts on something regarding fear in fights. Do T levels, mine is currently around 753, actually matter in this context, or is that more of you got it or you don't? I've been boxing on and off for about 5 years, and I also worked as a correctional officer. In real life altercations with inmates, I've always come out on top and never really felt fear. I assume because everything happens so fast, you don't even have time to think. But in sparring or competition, I get absolutely scared shitless before starting every time. A big part of it is honestly the fear of hurting someone else, mixed with the usual fear of getting hurt. Do you have any advice for getting out of your own head in these moments? Let's see. The first question was if T levels. Well, obviously T levels play a role in fear in fighting, and even in fighting performance. I've cited the few studies on the topic a few times, but it's really, like I always say, it's not androgen status, not just T levels, right? So it's your T levels, your cortisol levels, your androgen receptors, your DHT, your free T, all of that stuff, right? Also your dopamine and dopamine receptors and noradrenaline and adrenaline. All of those things play a role. Obviously T's at the center. Now, as far as fear, that's, cortisol and, low GABA signaling. So try to increase DHT, right? DHT is a monster at keeping men calm, keeping men not only lowers fear, it makes you attracted to fear and risk, right? So it actually makes it fun, right? So that's one of the benefits of high androgen status is not only you're not afraid, you are actually motivated to approach scary scenarios. So a lot of times when people say, "Oh, I'm afraid before a fight" or whatever, which obviously you should feel some kind of fear, some kind of anxiety, right? Enough to kick in that fight or flight. But if you like very, very scared, yeah, that's an issue with DHT signaling, right? And of course, cortisol, GABA, all the other players. So, yeah, to answer your question, yeah, DHT plays a role more than just T levels. You also asked something else. You said, "Oh, how do I get out of my own head?" Well, you mentioned two things. First, you said the fear of hurting somebody else. You got to get over that because the person is not afraid to hurt you, on average. Also, as far as the fear of getting hurt yourself, that always comes down to preparation, right? The more prepared you are, the more wins and losses you have under your belt, the more that fear will go away. It's very hard to just meditate that fear away, right? The fear of getting hurt comes from winning a lot of fights and also losing a lot of fights or sparring sessions and then surviving it, right? That's how the brain learns to relax during those scenarios. Best advice I could give you. Next, I gotta hurry up now. How to follow 10 commandments during exam weeks, how to do them efficiently. What do you mean how to follow? You just follow them, But as far as how to do them efficiently, whatever, just schedule when you will be doing each T commandment, right? Don't just wake up and go through your day and hope by the end of the day you'll do all 10. It will almost never happen. Schedule in advance. Next, can you give us an explanation of how an imbalance in omega-6 or omega-3 can fuck up our test? What does that have to do with fighting and testosterone? So that's from Andy Young. But long story short, it's going to increase inflammation. That's one of the main things. And it's also going to make your Leydig cells less sensitive to luteinizing hormone. Next, Andy, would you say grinding my own meat with a very lean... What? Grinding my own meat with a very lean meat mixed with organs? Okay. I thought you want some data shit. Liver, heart, kidneys, and making a nutritious beef patty is the only source of protein I need. I won't say the only, right? Because there's no omega-3s in that bitch. But it's definitely going to be healthy. Next, internet user, FMI 22, 85 kg, 180 centimeters. Let's say we have a training program with HSP training, full body 3 times a week, and 3 times a week boxing training. Could we add more boxing sessions here since the main goal is skill development for boxing? Yes. Would you say a natural athlete can train and recover from more than 6 weekly training sessions due to all the CNS fatigue, even if all else is equal? Did you have experience with something like this? Yeah, you could definitely train 6 times a week. Obviously not, obviously a mixture, right? Lifting, cardio, combat sports. But you will have to schedule the intensity, right? So, for example, you can't do a heavy day and then the very next day do like some fucking crazy sparring session, and then the very next day do stretch day, and then the very next day do some long fucking brutal run. No. You're gonna have to, follow an undulating system where you do all 6 sessions, but you schedule them based on your recovery metrics and your KPIs. Let's see. Next, Altaf Tripati, 17 years old, 5'8", 75 kgs, 18%, 21 FFMI, 105 kg bench. Short-term goal, clear my National University entrance exam on December 7th. Premise of my question, how to summon mental aggression and confidence. My question is specific, but I think the answer that you gave should be applicable to a lot of things. Like if you've got a professional fight coming up as opposed to an exam. I, for one, have a national level exam coming up on the 7th of December and more than 100K students competing for a spot in the top universities. I'm confident in my ability, but in the back of my mind, I have this weird fear that I'll choke, that I enter the exam hall to conquer, but some of the other thing is going to happen, and I'm going to get nervous and screw up. I made a lot of sacrifices to ready myself for this exam. I broke up with my girlfriend 2 months back, and I've been preparing for over a year. This exam is going to determine where I spend my next half a decade. Holy shit. How should I get this feeling off of me? How do I ensure that I fuck this exam in both holes on D-Day? Right? He posted a physique pic. Okay, you looking swole than a motherfucker. Definitely juicing, but doesn't matter. You're looking swole. Okay, so as far as the confidence, let me see. I think you asked something else. I'm confident in my ability. Yeah, so it's similar to what I said earlier about, confidence. It, like I said, guys, you're not going to get any, new shiny object answer, right? Confidence comes down, apart from obviously HSP commandments and DHT and testosterone. These are the hormonal mechanisms, right? These are like the brakes that you got to have to build a castle. If all of those things are checked, the biggest levers you could pull to increase confidence is mainly going to be history of wins, history of losses. If you never lost or failed, you will not have maximum confidence, believe it or not. Why? Because your brain doesn't know how it's going to react when it loses. And that's going to create anxiety and fear. Same reason, if you never won, your brain is always going to be afraid because it's going to think that, oh my God, I can't do this, I'm a loser. You need both. So if you're trying to increase confidence at something, you want to get comfortable winning, meaning through winning a lot, right? But you also want to lose, man. You want to fail. This way your brain knows, okay, I know what failure feels like, and it doesn't hurt as much as I fucking thought it did. Because a lot of times the things that we worried about are scarier in our head than in reality, than when it actually happened. Which is why when people lose a lot, sometimes they become more confident, right? Obviously, the opposite is also true, right? Some people can lose a lot and become less confident, but that's why you need both. You need the losses and the wins. As far as your exam, well, it's hard to get a history of losses in that exam because it's just, it's not an exam you could just keep taking over and over again, but I want you to pretend like you already failed. I know it sounds crazy, but it's going to allow you to calm down. Pretend like you already failed. Assuming you prepared, right? Assuming you studied your ass off, you super prepared, whatever. The only thing you could do now is pretend you already failed and come up with a game plan. What would you do if you failed that test? Having a backup plan will allow your brain to calm down and say, okay, it's not the end of the world. And then you go into the test, having prepared, having studied, and you'll be able to ace it, right? Next, on sex and status within the 10 T commandments. Let me see how many more questions. God damn it. Yeah, I'm going to have to go fast, man, because y'all motherfuckers. Look at this. Oh, my God. Yeah, I got to go fast. This video is way too long. All else equal, other commandments and attractiveness. Are there meaningful or any changes in that androgen status between A, talking to women, B, pursuing women, C, being monogamous and clapping versus dating casually and being polygamous? What's the optimal relationship? So I'm just going to answer as I go. So are there any meaningful changes between talking, pursuing, being monogamous versus clapping, dating? Polygamous is always going to give you the most. Clapping is going to give you the most. Talking and pursuing is going to give you higher T than not talking and pursuing. But, the polygamous lifestyle, is what's associated with the highest T. For many reasons that I explained before. Next, what's the optimal relationship setup for a young man? Again, booty call, right? Having a lot of different women, multiple women a month. Ideally, is obviously a week, but we gotta be realistic. But yeah, that is the optimal setup because it maximizes all of your hormones. Everything. Dopamine is high, adrenaline is high, norepinephrine is high, testosterone is high, DHT is high, androgen receptors are high. Everything is high because your body's. Remember, that's what your DNA, the Y chromosome, wants to do. It's just clap, 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 and then die at like 20, right? So yeah, that's what optimizes, everything that comes out of a man. And that's the reason why the reverse is also true. When men on monogamous relationships, they get dad bods, prolactin goes up, cortisol goes up, because now it's the opposite. Anyway, next question. What's the optimal relationship setup? I answer that is one more worth pursuing, accounting for time and money. Taking these women on dates. I mean, I was never a take women on dates, guys. I was a booty call type of guy, right? Where I just wanted to clap. I'm not a big fan of dates. Sometimes here and there, you could probably sneak a few ones in. But, I told you, most of the time I was too depressed for that shit. I did not have time. I was too direct. And, and I was too broke too. Let's see. But you could do days. You could take them on days. Just keep it balanced, man. Keep it balanced because it's going to cost you a lot of time and money, which is really not needed, especially if you're not guaranteed to smash. Now, if I'm guaranteed to smash, then I'm taking a bitch on mad dates. But it's a risk-reward calculation you're going to have to do. Anyway, should I be consistently cold approaching at gym or is Tinder the move? Tinder is not, online dating is never the move unless you are freaking Chad in the face and height. As far as cold approaching, same thing. It's not the move unless you are Chad. Next, I'm new to MMA and can only access it once a week, so infrequency is a bottleneck for competition. Nevertheless, can I spar/roll? I'm doing it light and to learn technique. How could I get that competition box checked off when I feel I'm not competing for status, only to improve and avoid injury? Should I make myself view it in that light, or should I do something else to gain a sense of competition? If so, what? Does feeling like I'm improving after a roll spar count enough? As far as the competition part, it has to be against actual men, right? It has to be against actual men. Else your amygdala is not going to fire the same. Next, Angel al-Safir. I can't pronounce your last name. I have a nurse to fight lately, and even though I just boxed for a few months 3 years ago, my mind tells me I can knock everybody the fuck down. I need to put some things in place with my life before finding a gym to practice whatever combat sport. What do you recommend to do with this energy urges? Does doing shadow at home helps? Obviously it helps. Shadow boxing helps. But hold on, let's see. I'm trying to see why you're not in. Why'd you stop martial arts? Why'd you stop boxing? I need to put some things. Okay. You said I need to put some things in place with my life before finding a gym to practice. Yeah, buy boxing, buy a punching bag, right, or a punching dummy, and then beat the shit out of it every day, right? That's what I do. Next. Fisted. Studies prove you can grow your PP half an inch in 6 months doing pump work daily. You think it's worth the return on investment? Is this something we should consider? It's you probably refer to that one study that has so many limitations and it's so conditional. But yeah, it's so low ROI. Anyway. Tapatio is the violence and aggressiveness needed to level up in life, something that gets triggered physically or mentally. And what role does tea play in that? Prediction. Migan will call you tapioca right now. You motherfucker. I gotta type this. You mother effer. This guy's too smart. He's probably just going down based on the likes to see where I'm at. But that was funny. But yeah. So anyway, back to Tapatio tapioca. Is the violence and aggressiveness needed to level up in life something that gets triggered physically or mentally? Mentally. Does tea play a role in that? Absolutely. You guys got to study the amygdala, because a lot of the stuff that leads to the T boost from, for status and motivation, aggression, it really starts with the amygdala. There's a reason why it has the most androgen receptors. Well, one of the most androgen receptor dense region in the brain. It affects T and then T affects it. But anyway, Alda Gaga, I can't pronounce your last name. 16 years old, 78 kg, 20% body fat, 5'8". Do you still think I should lower my body fat for less estrogen, or is the effects very small at my age? I still want to be bulky and strong. I think I answered that a few days ago. But if you want to be bulky and strong, you're gonna have to be in the 15 to 20% body fat range. You want to be aesthetic and lean and aesthetic, attract women and, longevity and all that stuff, then you have to be between 10 and 15% body fat. So because you said bulky and strong, then 15 or 20% body fat max is the range. If you want to be athletic and aesthetic and have longevity, great energy levels, low estrogen, high DHT, then you got to be around closer to 10%. Next, Ahmed Iben al-Safir. So that's Ahmed, son of al-Safir. Anyway, age 19 years old, weighs 70 kgs, 15% body fat, 6 foot tall, Cali guy, career goal, engineer. Yes, BJJ and been street fighting ever since I was a kid. Good. So okay, you didn't really ask a question. All right. Chris Fiorito, age 18, weight 170 pounds, 18% body fat, FMI 20. Do you think Beta-Alanine is a worthwhile supplement? It doesn't increase T directly from what I read, but since it increases muscle endurance, will the indirect increase any and other effects make it worthwhile? So if you doing a sport that requires endurance, such as, again, martial arts, running, yeah, sure. It's going to help you push through the pain. Or if you're going through a phase in your life where you really want to max out your VO2 max, great. Beta-Alanine is great because As you guys know, to increase your VO2 max, you got to go through some pain, right? You got to do HIT, and you got to sometimes go above that 10, 20-second limit, right? Sometimes more than 30 seconds. And beta-alanine is going to give you the ability to keep pushing when lactic acid builds up. So it's only worth it in those, limited conditional contexts. Other than that, not really. Next, Wilson Buck. This is the last question. Age 34, height 5'11", 177 pounds, 15% body fat, FMI 21.3, squat 285/4. Really good squat. Good shit. All right, Migan, I love your content. I found you about 6 months ago, and I've been working through your old videos ever since. Nice, appreciate it. I used to train Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu when I was younger, but stopped because of an overuse injury and work getting crazy. I still work 70 to 80 hours a week most weeks, but managed to set aside time for 3 full-body strength workouts a week. Good. Team, no excuses. I love it. I then try to fit in cardio when possible and do things like walk or bike to work where I can to get some extra activity and morning sunlight. Nice. This motherfucker's a beast. My question is, what type of a minimum cardio standard would you recommend for someone training a martial art? Personally, I don't plan on competing in events, good, and definitely don't plan on running any races, but when I was training before, I know how demanding the training can be from a cardio perspective. I'm hoping to get a decent level of cardio before I jump back into training so I get my money's worth out of the classes. I don't want to be spending money on classes just to get my ass into shape doing the lessons. Hopefully that makes sense. Love your work. Keep it up, brother. Appreciate the love. Yeah, by the way, I love the no excuse mentality. I fucking love it. As far as cardio, yeah, so I would say minimum effective dose, right? Do zone 2 cardio 2 to 3 times a week, and do HIT cardio, so that's zone 4 to 5, 2 to 3 times a week, right? If you can do 2 to 3, start at 1 or twice a week, and then every week increase the intensity or increase the frequency, right? And that's more than enough. The zone 2 cardio can be 20 to 30 minutes, and the HIT can be 10 minutes max. It could be like 1 to 3 sets or 2 to 3 sets of 10 or 30 seconds each. And like I said, every week, simply make it harder and harder as your KPIs allow you to, your recovery allows you to. And that's a very, very fast way to increase your cardio. Now, if you want to increase your cardio even faster than that, then you're going to have to spam HIT, because HIT is by far the fastest way to increase VO2 max, right, to increase cardio. Unfortunately, that also comes with a big recovery burden, so you have to manage both. All right, guys, hope this video helps. Remember to join and buy the T-Diet course in the school community. It's hours of goated content. I'm out.